Welcome back to our live coverage from Devex World 2018. I'm joined now by Paul Weisenfeld, Executive Vice President for International Development at RTI. Paul, thanks very much for coming in.
Thank you, glad to be here.
Now, you're here at Devex World talking about data revolution, specifically about the role data can play in eradicating diseases. What is your sense of the potential of data to really move the needle on progress here?
So data has an enormous potential to move the needle on progress. We've been talking for years in development about the promise of big data. And we've seen some advances. I think data, and it's not just data, it's kind of a technological revolution. When you think about big data, I think it's really important to realize that what big data means in the modern world, or the possibilities, are because we've had tremendous advances in computing power, tremendous advances in the availability and explosion of data. We have algorithms that enable us to analyze data from disparate sources, and then advances in the social sciences, such as behavioral economics. And it's the combination of all of that that's raised this promise that puts us in a position where we're better able to understand, describe, and predict human behavior. If you talk about the health field in particular, we've seen great advances. We're lucky in RTI, we manage the Neglected Tropical Disease Program for USAID, and we've seen in the last 2 years the elimination of trachoma in Laos, Cambodia, the elimination of lymphatic filariasis in several countries. As you get close to elimination, the diseases, the last mile efforts are the hardest. And what big data allows you to do is do more precise mapping of disease prevalence. If you can do that, you can more precisely target interventions, mass drug administrations. And without that, it's hard to go that last mile. So that's one of the key examples.
And what's your advice to development implementers in our sector about how to go beyond the traditional monitoring and evaluation M&E approach to really sort of improve program effectiveness and even policy decision making beyond that?
So I think that's a critical question, because we have the promise of big data on the one hand, and a lot of the conversations about big data naturally focus on the technological advances that I talked about. There's always new bells and whistles. There are sensors. We're all looking for wearable sensors that are going to give us more precise information on human health. There's drones, there's improved satellite imagery, et cetera, like SMS surveys. So you can easily get pulled down a rabbit hole on the technology. And the technology is important because it's transformative, but it doesn't get action. So when you talk about evidence-based decision making, it's not self-executing. Policymakers don't decide, oh, we're going to change this legislation simply because there's a survey or simply because there's data. There's a lot of complexity in development and understanding. My advice to implementers is you have to dive deep into the complexity and understand the social context, the economic, the political, the cultural context. Who are the blockers for change? Who are the champions? How do you use data in a way that facilitates and enables the champions to move things forward?
And looking ahead, what is the next frontier for RTI in terms of the tools that you're developing? What's the potential of the approach that you're taking on things like learning, adapting, really towards more effective and efficient policymaking?
So for us, kind of the way forward is to be really people-centered in the tools. Understand, as I said, both the hard and the soft side, the technology, how to apply the technology in ways that are cost-effective in developing country context. Cost effectiveness is key. Make sure they're people-centered. And one way to do that is involving users and user participation. If you're working with farmers, involve farmers in collecting and analyzing data, and that brings greater ownership of the data and less donorship. And frankly, there are technological changes. I don't want to poo-poo the technology, because that is what gives us the potential to be transformative. So RTI has been a real innovator in early grade reading assessments that have been vital in moving the needle on literacy. But there's a lot more that we're innovating with now and thinking about, well, how do you do helpful tools, assessments on writing that are cost effective, that could be applied at scale? How do you think about addressing people who have learning disabilities? Are there tools for that? And kind of a really key, I'll mention two other key ones for us, are non-cognitive skills.
Right.
So we spend a lot of time on reading and writing and math, But we know, because of the advances in behavioral economics and social science, that the range of non-cognitive skills or executive function are really what's key to success. So are there cost-effective ways at scale, tools that can collect and analyze data on that?
And so making it more accessible and actionable as well at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And beyond this idea of data-driven decision-making at an organizational level, how can the global development sector at large better track, this global macro level data to drive progress? And is interoperability the key aim here?
I think interoperability is an absolute key aim. There needs to be competition is a good thing, but there needs to be collaboration at the same time on systems, whether it's health systems or education systems. And it also goes back to something that the global community really can do. Is we always talk about big data, but one of my colleagues likes to use the term little data. So if you go to most resource-poor settings, they don't know how many schools they have. They don't know how many teachers are in the schools, how many medicines of vital medicines are in the clinics, how many nurses are in the clinics. If you don't have that little data, if you're not collecting and have systems to do that, then big data is not going to do anything. So kind of achieving and measuring and getting everyone along the SDGs requires that you fix little data at that micro level and that you have interoperability at the macro level.
And what are some of the obstacles there? How can they be overcome in practice? What really needs to change to really garner success in this area?
I think a key thing is collaboration on platforms, but with host country governments.
Right.
We have to build on and strengthen host country government systems. So if they don't have the ability to manage the data, if they don't have the resources even to fund it. I mean, in the United States, labor market information is a good example. We take it for granted in Europe and the United States that our Commerce Department issues regular reports on the state of the economy, whether it's employment or a whole range of issues. And the investment community expects it, they're waiting for it, they understand it, they follow kind of regular standard formats, and people make decisions, and it's key to driving investment and economic dynamism. That's absent in many developing countries. So strengthening those systems and helping them understand the importance of data to drive economic development, to drive investment. And there, in fact, in the labor market case, are there new tools, mining social media data such as LinkedIn, in order to replace some of the absence of labor market information, I think is an interesting area to explore that we're looking at.
So striving towards a joined-up approach. Finally, Paul, again, looking ahead, some words of advice for people looking to work in our global development sector in the future. What skills might be increasingly in demand for this next generation of global development professionals?
I mean, the first thing I'd say, I spend a lot of time interviewing people, and almost everyone I interview is a lot smarter than I am. So the next generation really is very far ahead, and that's exciting. I think the potential for growth is tremendous.
The digital natives.
Digital natives. But I think understanding it's not only about the technology is key and vital and holds great promise, but it's not only about technology. So even if you're not a technologist, understanding the technology is important. And if you are a technologist, or if you're not, understanding that policy change is about advocacy, it's about understanding the complexity of social, political, economic systems. So people who have that range of soft skills to influence and drive change.
Great. Many thanks for joining us, Paul,
You're
talking
welcome.
about data revolution.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And well, to our viewers at home, stay tuned as we bring you more coverage, including a news wrap-up from Devex World 2018.